kid? Welcome everybody back to another episode of the Handsome Homebuyer podcast. My name is Charles, AKA the Handsome Homebuyer, AKA Captain Permit, AKA
El Judío Maravilloso.
You know what that means, right? Yeah, buddy.
Wow.
No Spanish. AKA the soon-to-be 2020 LLS Man of the Year. A lot of things going on. We got a big educational event coming on. Obviously, you guys don't know, but you're going to know. I'm running for LLS Man of the Year for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. We're putting on a big benefit. We're going to do 3 different events. The first and foremost pinnacle of the run is going to happen somewhere between April and June. I'm getting 9 of the top real estate investors on Long Island that range anywhere from fix and flip, 1 to 4 family rentals, tax liens, tax deeds, marketing, lending, private lending, construction, multifamily, out of state. These 2 guys are coming on, 26 and 32. They currently manage $300 million across 4,500 units in the Southeast. It's going to be an unbelievable event. If you're someone that always wanted to get into real estate, this is where you do it. We're going to be out there naked. This is not a Fortune Builders program where we bring you in there and then try to sell you a $50,000 program. We're going to stand out there and tell you what we do day in and day out, how we've made millions of dollars doing it, and how it's changed our lives, but more importantly, how it's changed our kids' lives. Right? Obviously, I'm the Handsome Homebuyer. If you have a house that smells like cat pee, is dated from the 1960s, has 6 inches of mold on the wall, human waste floating past the basement steps. Yep, you know it. Land, gas stations, assisted living facilities, you name it. If God created and it can't be moved, I'm quick, I'm easy, I'm a good time. I want to buy it. Maddie, you know who else is also a good time?
Captain Permit.
Damn right, Captain Permit. 516-513-8838. If you need plans, if you need permits, if you need anything permit related, legalizing a deck, basement, building a house, interior alterations, commercial properties, you name it, we do it. And we have the best looking staff. We got Mike up front, jacked to the nines, muscle striation like you've never seen, reformed bad boy, trying to go straight, but still a little bit bad. Like I always say, ladies, realtors, there is nothing sexier than a man that is jacked, pretty, was a bad boy, is trying to go straight, and can legalize your client's deck. Think about that for a minute. All right, today's guest, unbelievable. I don't know anything about him. All I know is
that is true.
All I know is I see him on social media, and I'm like, this guy lives Jay-Z's life, only better. He's fucking cool. Like I always tell people, there's good and bad with getting old.
Yeah.
So I'm 40, you're 38.
Yeah.
So I feel like you can identify with this, although you haven't crossed the threshold of 40.
Yeah.
But as you get older, there's good and bad. The bad is you can't eat ice cream because maybe you can, but I can't. Us mere mortals can't. You get this like fat blob that gets stuck to you that takes like weeks of soul cycle to get off. And then you get fucked up shit like ear hair. Like your hair is gone, although yours isn't. Your hairline hasn't moved since birth.
I mean, knock on wood, Charles.
Mine's been gone for 20 years. But like I always say, maybe 2 weeks ago, I had like a 6-inch long ear hair. My girlfriend's like, come here, pulls this thing out, snap.
Oh, man.
So that's the bad. You got to take the good with the bad. The good is you get this cool kind of like psychicness about you where you can like look at a person and you could say, this person's cool and I want to talk to them and we're going to chop it up.
That's it.
On the podcast.
That's it.
So that is you, sir. And I appreciate you coming out here and having faith, not knowing anything about me.
No. I mean, look, when you invited me here, I looked you up a little bit. I'm like, I got to be on his podcast. So
Beautiful.
I'm excited to be here.
Like, all right, he's not a serial killer. We're going to go.
Exactly.
So let me give the rundown here. The list is long but distinguished. He is currently the VP of Lending at Citizens Bank. Are you the youngest VP of Lending ever?
I don't know about that.
I feel like you are. On this podcast, you are.
Yes.
On the Handsome Homebuyer podcast, he is the youngest VP of Lending at Citizens Bank. He's been in the mortgage world for 17 years. He was a walk-on at UConn. Yeah. It's pretty dope, bro.
Yeah. Played for Coach Calhoun.
You know what?
Unbelievable experience.
In the next room, we have like a little hoop.
Oh,
I
yeah?
want to see you. I want to see you drop some.
For sure.
NYU Law went there.
Yep.
Former president of DE Capital. Restaurateur.
Yes.
Went into the restaurant business, and I can't wait to talk about this.
Yeah.
In 2009, when the fucking world was falling apart.
That is true. During the recession, yep.
You now have 4 concepts.
Yeah.
Spot Dessert Bar, which I've been to, which is amazing. Will change your life. Guy, Scoop, and...
Obow.
Fuck. Dude, but I'm going to get the name right.
Yep.
Mr. Ace Watanasuparp.
Yep.
Yes.
You got it. Bam.
Nailed it, bro.
You nailed it.
Yeah, buddy. Thanks for coming down, man. I really
Of course,
appreciate
man.
it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
I've been pumped up to meet you. Again, I've heard a lot of great things about you. We have mutual friends.
Yeah.
We're in the real estate space. You operate primarily in New York City, or you're everywhere?
Yeah, so basically tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. We do have snowbirds that go out to LA and Florida, so we help service them as well. Sometimes folks in Colorado. So, I mean, look, we're federally chartered, all 50 states.
So just before we bring it back,
Yeah.
I want just if you could explain your role as VP of Lending,
Yeah.
what that entails, what's that involved in. I want to kick it back. And
Of course. So VP of Citizens Bank now this is probably ongoing now. This is my 5th year. So pretty fast, time flies, but really I manage and operate our retail lending platform. So basically anything that has to do with sales, operations, fulfillment, they all roll up into myself. And I've been a loan officer, way back when in 2003. So sort of worked my way up in terms of management. And now I pretty much lead their strategic alliances, anything from managing loan officers. We have roughly around over 140 loan officers in the region now.
Nice.
We have probably in total, around 300 employees with fulfillment and support staff.
What kind of lending do you guys do?
So we do residential lending.
Okay.
We do have a commercial department, which we work in tandem with as well.
Okay.
So we do commercial and residential.
The bulk of it is residential.
The bulk of it is
like...
residential. We do a lot of new development, and we're really well known for our portfolio lending, which is basically money on our balance sheet, right? So if you're looking at loans up to $2 million, $3 million, we do them all.
I'm going to selfishly ask you something in the meantime.
Go ahead.
So if I had a package of, let's say, 50 single-family rental homes, would you do a package on that?
We won't do
God
a package.
damn it.
Yeah, exactly. But I do have a lot of friends that will. So
Yeah, we got to talk about that after.
I'll find a home for that for sure.
So you've been in the game for a long time. You've been in the game for 17 years.
Yeah, for a long time.
You've seen the highs, the lows. You've seen New York
Yeah.
City from, drugs and hookers to what it is today, and who knows where it'll go tomorrow. But I want to kick it back to the beginning to kind of get a little bit of a feel for people, where you came from, where you grew up, family background, etc.
Sure. So I come from an immigrant family. I'm actually half Taiwanese, half Thai. So my mom and dad, typical sort of that immigrated family life of, coming with $100. They worked 3 jobs each while I was growing up. And, it was tough. We grew up in Woodside, Queens, it was actually really diverse, but, it wasn't what it was today, right? So, growing up there, you kind of built that grit and that hard work that I've, learned from my parents. But gradually went to Bronx High School of Science, and then went to UConn for college. And then
Family pushed education always?
Family always, coming from an Asian family, it was always, whether you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, right? Those were your 2 choices. So, but, growing up, seeing my dad be somewhat of an entrepreneur really piqued interest. And I think really my passion into business, came at a very, very early age.
So I remember you saying, so you had an unbelievable education. You went to UConn.
Yeah.
Insane school. Then you went to NYU for law.
Yeah.
And then during that, after the first year, you decided that you
wasn't
didn't want to
for
go
me.
that route.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Just, it just didn't really appeal to me. I loved real estate. I knew I wanted to do something in real estate, just didn't know what. Even when I was at UConn, I was working at Diversa Mortgage Company, where I was just a cold caller, and, watching my dad, he was a engineer. So he would actually go to different homes, and, he was a contractor as well. So just being a kid and watching him fix homes, I'm like, you know what, Dad, you're fixing the home, but that old man that's getting that check, I want to be him, right? I want to be a landlord one day. So, he's like, if you want to understand what it is to acquire real estate, then maybe you should go on the financing side. And that's what I did after college.
So I'm curious to know, it sounds like you guys are obviously very close, very hardworking family. How did your father and mother feel when you were like, I'm not going to pursue law?
Oh man, that was probably the worst day of my life. No, I'm just kidding. But my mom chased me
that
around.
Could go either way.
My mom chased me around the house, and she's like, "You're crazy," But it's ultimately they supported what I wanted to do, right? Nice. And I'm glad, looking back at it, if we have any listeners that are, sort of figuring out what they want to do with their lives, or if they're going to school right now and their parents are pressuring them, always, and it may be cliche-ish, but you definitely want to always pursue something that you're passionate about, because at the end of the day, I think my life would have turned out very differently had I graduated and, let's say, I became an attorney. I don't even know what kind of attorney I would have became, but I'm glad I took this route. This journey has been tremendously fruitful.
Dude, life is amazing. It's
yeah,
beautiful.
life is amazing.
And you can't connect the dots going forward.
You can't.
Only looking back.
You'll never be able to figure out, what you want to do or what you want to become. But I think innately you kind of know what you're passionate about, right?
So the interesting thing is, I'm very curious to know, how do you go from UConn law to mortgages? Because it seems like real opposite ends of the spectrum.
So, after college, obviously, UConn, we're based up in Storrs, Connecticut. Okay. So I was part of this F&P program. It was a financial management program down in Stanford. Worked at UBS Warburg for about 6 months and just got homesick. I just really wanted to be back at home in New York with family and friends. And I'm like, you know what? This isn't for me anymore. I've been in Connecticut for 4 years. It was a fun time, it was a great time. But if you know anything about Connecticut, there's not much to do, right? So, I just wanted to be in the big city lights. And, I just packed up one day. I told pretty much UBS, it was my last day, and just came back home not really having a plan at all. And then I looked through monsterjobs.com, saw that you could potentially make over $100,000 at Citigroup. Didn't really know what that job entailed. Went, interviewed for the job at Citibank, and really walked away. He said, this is a pyramid scheme. I don't want to do commissions. And had a conversation with one of the managers, and he kind of talked to me, and I'll never forget this too, right? And, I was always that, typical, I wanted to kind of go within the path of a base salary. At the time, I think $40,000 annual salary was a pretty good salary, and I wanted to go into investment banking and all of that, sort of like that financial route. But once I actually talked to the manager at Citibank, and he explained a little bit about how commissions worked in sales, there's something about that. But for me, I just felt like it was always this pyramid scheme or used car salesman type of mentality. Commissions in general, right? So I walked away, and he said something that resonated with me. He said, Ace, I understand if you're scared, no problem. Right.
Wow.
So when someone says that to me, right, I was walking at UConn, here I am, I hated that word. So I turned around and I sat down again, and I'm like, look, I'm not scared. I just think commissions, it's a little bit scummy. It's like used car salesman like. And he said something that I'll never forget today. He said, Ace, look, I see potential in you, right? I think you have what it takes to become a good salesperson, and you're not limited in terms of your potential, revenue stream. But one thing that I want to ask you is, let's say you try it, and let's say you don't like it. What do you have to lose? And at the time, I didn't really understand his question, but I was like, I'm thinking about it. Like, nothing really, right? And he's like, exactly. So if you were to sit here at the age of 30 instead of 21 or 22 at the time, what do you have to lose, right? You have a family now. You may not be able to make risk. And he's like, look, if you don't like the job, in 6 months, just quit. And, ever since he said that, I went back. Life, right? I still said no at the time, but I went home and I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? If he has that much faith in me, maybe I'll take, I'll give it a shot. But long story short, I started the job, and he still didn't allow me to work, right? So he actually gave me a bunch of books. Okay. And I started with this guy, Kenny. I still remember today. And he said, Ace, you're not ready to go in as a loan officer.
Do you still have a relationship with him?
I do.
Because he's the man, this guy.
He's the man. He's the man. So
he's a prolific force in your life.
So back then, I didn't come from a well-off family at all, right? We were struggling. And, this is the guy that sold me to come into sales. And I was so against it. And you know what? I gave him a shot. So I'm like, you know what?
Sales in general?
Huh?
You were against sales in general, him?
I was against like that whole concept of sales. I always thought that base salary route was the way to go, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the safe way to go.
Yeah, it's the safe way to go, right? And here I am. I took a leap of faith, and I started. And my first day, he has stacks of books for me to read, and I'm not even going into real life production. He's just having me stay there, and he's like, Ace, you're going to be here for the next 3 months. So by my first month, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm paying for my train ride. I'm paying for lunch, paying out of pocket. I'm not making money here. So after a month, I'm like, you know what, Kenny, I quit. This is nonsense. This is like Karate Kid, wax on, wax off. You're just making me like wash all your cars here, you know, for free. I'm like, well, like, what the hell is going on? And then he actually said, well, do you think you're ready, Ace? And he put me on the phone, and, you know, I just made a total fool of myself, you know, in front of a client, and it was on speaker. And I think, you know, what that taught me was, it just taught me patience. It taught me to really kind of respect the craft. And I think ever since that experience, you know, I changed my whole approach, changed my viewpoint. And now you had someone that was in the office from like 7 a.m. to like 2 a.m. I still remember today. I literally, for a whole year, I was in the office from 7 to 2 a.m. every single day. Had bloody noses, left the office with Kenny. And,
Really?
yeah, that changed me like 180. So.
You know what it is? Like, I always tell people come to me like, Charles, listen, like, I want to do what you do. I want to flip 100 plus houses a year.
Yeah.
Like, how do I do it? And I'm like, I'm going to tell you. I was like, you have to, there's a man named Carl Chavone. He was my mentor.
Uh-huh.
You go, you meet him, you train with him. You spend at least the next year aggressively training with him every week.
Yeah.
And then you might be ready to give it a shot. And they just like, and they look at me like, dick. Like, everybody wants that instant gratification.
All the time.
That's our society.
Yep.
But all the successful people I meet, as you're once again proving, is it's a process. And the process always starts with education.
Always.
I had a call last night. I had 2 young hustlers. These kids I go to NYU with.
Mm-hmm.
They work for a fund right now, but they want to do fix and flip and single family. And I'm like, you guys know a lot, but in this arena you don't.
Yeah.
And you need the education.
Yeah.
And they're like, we don't need that. It always starts there.
Always. Know your trait, you know who your competitors are, and, you know, you can never stop learning, right? I mean, that's something that I learn every single day. It's not really about the destination, it's about the journey.
Of course. The process, that's what I always say to you. I'm like,
process.
it's not about the outcome, it's about the process.
Always.
And the rewarding part is the process.
Exactly.
It's the struggle. It's the grind. It's like, it's the pain. It's the days where you like last night I went for a run for an hour and a half because my brain was just mush.
Uh-huh.
Like those are the times where you push yourself past where you think you can go.
That's it.
Speaking of that, I want to go back to the Yukon thing because that's amazing. How tall are you?
I'm 5'9".
So 5'9".
Yeah. 165 at best.
On a good day.
On a good day. Yep.
You basketball was always a passion. Did you want to play
passion.
pro? Like, explain to me what that whole process was. I mean, being a walk on a Yukon is insane.
Yeah, it was a passion ever since I was 4 or 5 years old. You know, so I think you know, I grew up with a ball in my hand, right? So my dad would always take me to the parks, but literally, I think sports, it really teaches you something else, right? I mean, you know, I just had a passion for basketball. So whether it was snowing, whether it was raining, I was out there playing, right? Just honing on something that I loved, and it just became something that, you know, I was pretty good at a young age. And, you know, growing up in elementary school, I was put into a team that was like 2 years older than myself. So that kind of gave me a lot of practice with like older kids and things of that nature. And then when I went to high school at Bronx Science, I actually became the captain of the JV and varsity team, right? So that kind of gave me a little bit. And, you know, we were in the Bronx, so we were playing with all the brothers out there, you know?
Yeah.
But
they're like 6'3" in third grade.
But it'll be funny, you know, they call up the captains in the beginning of the game. And then, you know, you see me and you see, like, you know, a big 6'5" guy, and automatically the crowd, they're saying pork fried rice.
Stop
it. I swear to God.
Wow.
It was crazy back
Really?
then. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, look, it taught you to have like a pretty thick skin, you know, but once the ball's up there, then you got to prove, you know, why you're there, right?
Everyone's equal, man.
Yeah. But I mean, look, nobody ever thought that I was going to actually, like, I never thought that I was going to actually walk on to UConn. That was just... Did
you try to get scouted? Did you try to get a scholarship?
I had a couple of offers from D3 schools,
okay.
You know, but I mean, look, UConn, it's a D1, you know, nationally ranked. They just won the championship that year. So that was definitely something that was not in the cards. Now, did I want to play, you know, for like our Taiwanese or Thailand team? For sure. You know, that was a goal. But never in my wildest dreams did I think I would be a walk-on at UConn.
That's amazing. So, I mean, what was that experience like? You went to school and you're like, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot. What do I have to lose?
You know, it's interesting, right? And Josiah's heard this story a million times now. But, you know, I got there my freshman year, and I played at the field house. You know, I was pretty good. And a couple of guys even the manager of the field house, they were saying, Ace, you should try out for the team. We have walk-on tryouts. I didn't know what that was. It was basically for non-scholarship players. They have open tryouts for kids that actually go to that school. So I tried out my sophomore year. So I thought I was going to try out. So Nigel tells me that the tryouts are in the Armory building. And I went there. And lo and behold, the tryout was actually at Gampa Pavilion. So I went to the Army building. I'm like running around frantically trying to figure out where the tryouts are. Why isn't there anybody here? And why is it at the Army building instead of at a gym, right? I should have known better. But basically I was like trying to figure out, and I bumped into this girl outside the Army building finally. And she tells me the tryouts are in at Gampel, which is like where they play, right? And if you go to UConn, you'll know that it's a fairly big campus. By the time I ran there, tryouts already started. And that actually, at first I didn't really think anything of it, but as I thought about it more and more, there was a mixture of like disappointment, anger, and just like, why would he tell me that it's at the Army building? So I'm like, maybe, I don't know, maybe he misheard, whatever. So the next day I go to Nigel and I'm like, Nigel, why'd you tell me, tryouts was at the Army building? And then I'll never forget this. He said, Ace, look at you. And he starts laughing, right? He's like, you're Asian, you're 5'9". Did you really think that you even had a shot at making it on the team? So, at that point, and
Are we still friends with Nigel?
You know what? I'm really close to him, and because of that, I really, you could look at it in two ways in life, right? It could be somewhat of a deterrent or it could be a motivator.
Yes.
For me, it was a motivator for me. And at the time, my parents were going through a divorce and I was in Connecticut. So basketball was sort of like my safe haven. Yeah. And I kind of put all of my sort of anger and all of it into something that I grew up loving, right, which was basketball. So, I told myself, I wrote down, something on top of my pillow, which, I still have today, talent over heart over talent. Yeah. And that's something that I kind of wear on my sleeves every single day. And, it's just, waking up every single day. That year, I actually stayed at UConn and trained with the team in the summer. And because we didn't have any money growing up, I actually had to get a job. And that's where I worked at Diversa Mortgage Company. It's weird how everything kind of plays in, right? Yeah. But I stayed up on campus. I rented a house off of campus, paid my way there, and then just practiced with the team, worked out, tried out again pretty much my junior year, and that's when I made the team. Wow. So I got cut my sophomore year, trained the whole year, gained about like 15 pounds, and then I made it on the team my junior year.
And then you played junior and senior?
Junior and senior year.
And I remember you saying like a lot of the people, I don't know much about basketball players, but I remember you mentioned that a lot of people you played with ended up going pro.
Yeah, Karan Butler, Ben Gordon, Emeka Okafor. So,
damn.
To say, yeah, those were some great guys. And, even the guys that didn't make it on the team today, there's a brotherhood that you can never, ever explain. But, I'm close to every single one of them.
Dude, just what it takes to get to that level and then compete on that level.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know a lot about sports. I don't have really an attention span to sit and watch things on TV. But when I watch college ball versus professional ball, I like college ball better. Like, you could just tell that everything's on the line. Everything's on the line. You just you feel that emotion through the screen. Especially during March Madness, right? Yeah.
Like, nothing's guaranteed. Yeah. And a lot of these kids are playing for their lives, right? They're playing for their careers. But I think something that sports or even, collegiate sports teaches you. I came back to my dorm room with bruises, right? You have to remember, I'm 5'9". My physical stature wasn't made to be running through picks with like 6'5", 6'7" guys, right? Yeah. And, basically it would be like, it would be sort of a repetitive where it was to the point where my body was breaking down, right? And you just have to kind of ignore it and just kind of pull through. Yeah. And you're held to a higher standard because I knew I wasn't making to the NBA. So I definitely needed to make sure my academics was up to par, you know, and we had at the same time. And you have like this professor that travels with you. Really? Yeah. So, you're studying and, the rest of the folks are.
You have to maintain a certain
GPA, have to maintain a certain GPA. But for me, I knew I wasn't making to the NBA. So I definitely needed to have like a 3.8 average in finance, right? So,
yeah. Which in itself is
And it was tough balancing, the whole physicality of practice, morning, afternoon practices, along with schoolwork, basketball.
So what I'm curious to know is, obviously you had it there, and it carried through your career, your life now, and will. What drives you? Like, what's the driving factor for you?
What drives me?
Just what, like, for me, for example, people are like, oh, it's this, it's that. You have these rentals, whatever. I don't care about the money. Like I always tell people, like, I usually am running around wearing $50 worth of Gap clothes that I got on sale. For me, it's the challenge of pushing myself to do the hardest thing, in my opinion, that I could do in the hardest place, which is New York, which for me is ultimately to open a private equity fund in the next 3 to 5 years. Yeah. So I kind of have, and I was going to ask you this also, it's kind of common with very successful people that I have an addictive personality, or they'll have like addictive personalities where they're 150% or nothing, and they just can't help themselves to the point where, like, sometimes with in their relationships, it's tough. Who can really understand that? Yeah. Like my last podcast guest, he's like, my wife yesterday called me a sociopath. Like, she's like, she just can't understand my obsession with what I'm doing.
Yeah. I mean, I want to say it's similar, right? That sort of like,
you seem balanced.
I'm very Zen-like right now, right? But I'm not. Look, anything it's and Josiah knows this. It's like 100 or 0, right? Like there's no middle. I like to say, right?
Because it doesn't make sense. It's a waste of time. You don't have any time as it is.
And you know what? I still remember my dad, and he's a mentor, and so is Coach Calhoun and Dottie Herman and Howard. So I think it's important to kind of going back to the success and sort of like what drives you too. I think it's your surroundings as well. I think just being around sports and being around my dad. My dad was like a Muay Thai kickboxer.
Oh, yeah?
So he sort of taught me that sort of discipline at the same time, but kind of like all in or all.
Bro,
like it's all level. Offense, right? So we don't play defense in Muay Thai. We go offense, right? So.
Do you train? Have you trained?
I've trained when I was in high school. Yeah. So. But I think that sort of mentality of just going 100, right? And that's been taught. That's been something that's been sort of. I don't even want to say that it was pushed upon me, but it was just part of my surroundings, right? And I love competing. And I think that's something that you can't teach people, right? Which is like the competitiveness. Yeah. And, win or lose, I want to give it my all. So
it's interesting. When I look at people, like, if it's weird for me to say, because I feel like I'm kind of an asshole saying this, like unappreciative, but I'm not, and I'll explain the context. I think growing up the way you did was such a great benefit for me. And like, I grew up in Wantagh, which is an upper middle class kind of place. It's not, crazy money or anything, but my parents and my friends' parents struggled throughout their childhood, so they tried to make our lives a lot easier.
Definitely. And
as a result, like, I said to my dad, I'm like, Dad, I don't mean this obnoxiously. You were amazing. Mom's amazing. I had the best childhood ever, but I wish you wouldn't have given me so much. And I wish you would have made it harder, because all the great leaps and bounds I've made in my life come through extremely, like, gut-wrenching emotional experiences, failures, etc.
It's funny you say that, Charles, because growing up, I would always be, talking to my parents and saying, why can't we live in Flushing? Why can't we live in Bayside? All of my Long Island friends, they have cars. Why am I still having this blue reduced lunch ticket for like 25 cents, And like, I just never understood that.
Wow.
And, that was something that, I appreciate at the same time, because I saw my parents working 3 jobs, yet, my friends were getting cars, sophomore, junior year, and I'm here taking the train on a reduced fare, So it's one of those things where, yeah, you're right. It's one of those things where the grass is always greener on the other side, but I'm glad I went through those things in hindsight, because it teaches me to have that sort of grit and not, and because I saw my parents, have success in business and have failures in business, that roller coaster sort of ride.
Yes.
I'm grateful for that, because it taught me that success isn't always there, right? And failure is not always there too, but you have to be able to have that sort of pressure with yourself so that you're not comfortable at any time, because I think the awareness is key in terms of, people that have success, you can have failures with a mishap or whatnot, and people that are in a rut can easily become successful within 1 or 2 years, right? So,
And nothing, and what I say to people all the time is like, nothing lasts forever.
Nothing lasts forever. Exactly.
Like, just as soon as you find something that's working, you have to be like, all right, how do I maximize this? At the same time, let me look for the next thing. Because especially in today's world of tech and this,
you have to constantly
media,
evolve.
Always.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings me to the next point where I wanted to speak about, the restaurant industry. Obviously, you're a mogul. You're involved in a lot of different things, real estate, restaurants. But how do you segue then from the mortgage industry now into the restaurant industry, and how do you manage all of that and continue to scale?
So there was an incident that happened while I was at a bank. I won't name the bank, and there was a reorg during that time. It happened to be around Thanksgiving, and one of my mentors, who I trained under, going into that bank, was being let go. So guess who was replacing him? Myself.
Wow.
Now, that would have been an exciting moment for me.
If it wasn't him.
If it wasn't him, and if it wasn't the timing of the, of the decision, right? So, here I am. I'm close to him. He's my mentor. He's been talking to me about Thanksgiving, how he's going to buy turkey for the family, the whole nine, right? He's been with the company now, mind you, 25 years. Pinnacle Club, Billionaires Club, whatever awards you see, maybe 20 plaques. But he's older. He was in his 60s at the time, right? And, here I am. I was a young up and coming banker, and they wanted me to take over the area, right? And he was my mentor for about close to a year. And it just made me realize, and they ended up letting him go, but it made me realize early on too that this could be me 20, 30 years down the line when I'm 60, when I'm 65. And my cousin was always knocking on my door saying, hey, we should do something together. But my trajectory in the banking world was great. So I never really thought of anything or thought too much about the idea until that moment happened. Yeah. And I realized, it kind of gave me a foresight into what would be ACE, 30, 40 years from today, right? I would give 30 years of my heart and soul to the company, and lo and behold, a reorg or, just a decision making from a company, and they just want to pivot and shift to a different direction, right? So that was the beginning of myself and my cousin sort of coming together, thinking about a concept, and that's where Spot, was born.
Oh, that was the first one?
That was the first one, Spot in Obao. We actually opened up, crazy enough, we opened the restaurant the same day in November, the end of November in 2009. So I went to Spot, my cousin went to Obao, and we sort of...
And you actually, you worked in them?
Basically just worked in them, yeah.
So why the food industry? Because the food industry is hard, bro.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's as hard as you can get, depending on the type of food. I mean, the margins can be very, very slim.
It's one of the toughest businesses to run. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially, when you think about it like this. You're in a very densely populated area, which is good. But when you talk about a dessert spot, you have limited. It's not like you're serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you have all these hours to bring in revenue. Yeah. You're serving a very kind of niche type of cuisine that is within a certain time frame in a very expensive place to operate.
I know. Look, and I failed to mention, when I was in high school, my parents had a Thai restaurant. Okay. Called Bangkok Palace.
They did everything, man.
Yeah, they did everything.
You want to talk about hustle?
Yeah, my dad and my mom, they did everything.
They are OG.
But they opened up the Thai restaurant, and it failed within 2 years. But, obviously, I don't really want to say this out loud, but child labor laws, right? I was working when I was like 10 years old, right? 8, right? But it was great.
You were the
because
head chef and sous
I was the head chef, delivery boy, server, bus boy. But it allowed me and my cousin's a little bit older than me, and we both worked in the restaurants.
This is the cousin who you now
who I'm now partnered with. We both worked at the restaurants, and that kind of taught us the ins and outs of the restaurant business, literally from like soup to nuts. Like I worked basically almost every single position, right? And they closed down the restaurant, and then pretty much, so we kind of had a little bit of a background in operating a restaurant. But in 2009, the recession came about, and there was an opportunity. They were giving away leases, and my cousin had a restaurant already on St. Mark's Place.
They were giving them away?
They were giving
Like,
them
just
away because
put people in the stores.
everything was empty, right?
Wow. I didn't know that.
We were just in a recession period where housing was crashing. So obviously commercial was also not doing well. So there were amazing deals in areas that were, previously were prime areas. So we had amazing rents in those spaces. So we took down the space without really even having a concept. So we kind of went the sort of the opposite of what you should be doing. So today I teach everyone, have a concept, know your strength, know your weakness, right? Know your competitors. We didn't do any of that. We just had real estate space and we just went in.
Free real estate space.
Like,
but sometimes that's what it
takes.
takes.
And sometimes it's just one of those things where you just got to do it, right? To what you said, Charles. And we kind of learned a lot. We failed a lot. I can tell you Spot was redlining for a whole year. Yeah. I even had cupcakes thrown at me just to sell a cupcake. So that story was a little insane that I'll never forget.
Did you leave the mortgage world while
I did not
do that, or
you
were doubling up and doing both?
So the best thing about having a partner is my cousin was the operator.
Okay.
So he would be working with maintenance and the chefs and the cooks. I'd be handling the finance and the front of the house.
Okay.
So basically after the bank, I literally would go straight to the restaurant, and that would be my days for like 3 years in a row.
Wow.
So bank full time, and then restaurants at night. Go to sleep at like 1 a.m, 2 a.m. after the restaurant closes, and then start all over. So it was a grind. It was a big grind.
For I always tell you, for as simple as it is, it's that hard. You got to have blind faith.
Yeah.
And it always, but once you understand the process, it's very interesting because this is what's going to have to happen. I'm going to have to struggle through this. I have to learn this.
Yep.
I'm going to fail here. And then eventually 2-3 years down the road, I'm going to I'm going to get traction. And we're going to move. I mean,
through the failures and not having a critical path, right? We call it a critical path now in the restaurant business, meaning you work your way from, the end goal, and then you work your way all the way back to the first day. Yeah. So, reverse engineering everything. But, knowing that and going through those challenges early really allowed us to now really understand, how to consolidate, how to scale, because when we first started our restaurant business, there were concepts that were successful and there were concepts that weren't successful. But the one thing that we did learn was, when you open up a restaurant or in anything that you do, you want to build it for scale. And what we were doing is we had actually 5 restaurants within that 10-year time period where all 5 restaurants had different concepts. Okay. But today, if you look at, our portfolio, we only have 4 concepts, but we have 3 Obaos, 4 spot dessert bars. Yeah. Right? We're starting Scoop and Guy. We're looking to scale to like maybe 10 locations in New York City. Wow. It's all about focusing on one concept, right? And just making that better instead of having 5 different concepts.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I want to transition. I mean, you've been in the game a long time, bro. Like you're very young. At least I like to think we're young. Yeah. Right? I had an 18-year-old girl not that long ago tell me I'm old enough to be her father, which is depressing because it's true.
For sure.
But I still feel like we're young.
Definitely.
But so you've seen, like in 17 years, you've seen the rise of New York City. You've seen everything.
The real estate market,
You've seen the worst crash that any of us will ever see in our lives.
Definitely.
Just kind of take me through that. I'm curious to know, your experience through watching it just go through the roof to coming down to rising bigger than it's ever been.
Yeah. I mean, look, 2002 was during the refinance boom, right? So coming into it, there was definitely a huge wave of everyone that had a pulse could get a mortgage. And then you have 2008 and 2009, the crash, where probably one of the biggest recessions our country has ever seen. And then now to, 2015, 2016 at the height. And now probably coming back to somewhat of a correction, right? And I think in all different facets, and even when my parents were, working on buying real estate, I still remember rates were at 17% at Greenpoint Bank. Yeah. And
what was this, early 80s?
Yeah, early 80s, and people are complaining about, 3.5% rate being too high, right? So I'm like, wow, perspective is key here, ladies and gentlemen. But look, I think we're in a time frame here where, it's a perfect storm. I like to tell everyone, right? We're at an all-time low when you're talking about rates. Yep. And, if you're not buying something all cash, a lot of people need to remember, you live in the payment, not the price.
Yep.
And I like to tell that to a lot of folks out there, because so many times you're so focused on the price. But if you're leveraging finance, you're really living in the payment. So I like to tell everyone it's a perfect storm where sellers are now coming back down to realization, and price points are now more realistic. And what's great about the unknown is that people are willing to make a deal, right? And if you wait until the real estate market bottoms out, then they already know what that plateau is.
Yeah.
But right now, during this sort of unknown period with the new administration in November coming in, or whatever happens with the election, there's a lot of sellers willing to make a deal.
Yeah.
But buyers need to understand that they need to be in the game to really, find those sort of diamond in the rough, right?
And I think one shitty thing that the whole skyrocketing of the real estate boom did was, I think people look at their houses in a very different way now. Like they looked at them in a way like now, oh, I'm going to make money on this. I have to buy it in order for it to go up. Whereas years ago, people would look at it and say, I need a place to live. Yeah. What can I afford? And it's awesome that you do that. I know, people like Eric Braun do that, where they sit down and they're like, listen, forget about the price. Yeah. This is what you can afford on a month-to-month basis. Yeah. And I think people have to get out of that whole, like, I'm going to buy this, live in it for 2 or 3 years and sell it and make 30%, because that's not the reality.
Yeah. And I think the ethos has changed a little bit too, right? I think if you look at someone growing up in this country 10 years ago, I think the motto or the sort of the American dream was to own a home. Yeah. Today, that mentality may be a little bit different with millennials, totally right? The trend is a little bit different, but the one thing that we can see from historical data is that real estate has always appreciated throughout the years, right? And how you use that vehicle and how you actually leverage that as we talk about financial literacy will be key, going forward for the millennial buyers, and really educating them about, look, if you don't want to buy it to live in your primary home, you should be looking at multifamily, something that you're doing every single day, Charles, and use it as a cash flow basis, right? Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that I've seen throughout the years. The one thing that we talked about too is not being stagnant, really understanding the trends of the marketplace and really being able to pivot and shift your mindset. So that's how I've always been able to evolve in my career when it comes to real estate, is not being reactive, but being proactive to the marketplaces and sort of seeing those trends and reacting to them before it actually happens, right? So.
No, very smart. I mean, that's the only way to survive. I mean, the days of our grandparents being at a job for 30 years, getting the gold watch, are long gone. I mean, everything now, it looks like has a 3 to 5 year life expectancy, if everything. That. And then the next biggest thing is, I want to close out with what is your future look like? What are the goals, the aspirations? I mean, you've done a lot. You have a lot of time left. What does Lisa's future look like?
I mean, I still want to really pursue in terms of banking, at the highest level possible. That's something that's always been my love, my passion. And obviously, we'll see what happens with the restaurant business. We're creating a hospitality group called Chase, and we're having a lot of other holding companies alongside of it. But it seems in terms of the trajectory, we just, knock on wood, just had a family office, of $65 billion backing our group up. So
very cool. That's
we're
amazing.
Looking to expand into, across the country with over 500 to 1,000 units within the next 5 years. So that growth plan.
Multifamily? Real estate or restaurants?
Restaurants. And then we're also looking to, within those 500 to 1,000 units, take down about 100 to 200 real estate properties from there. So we'll be talking a lot, Charles.
Spot Dessert Bar coming to a corner near you.
That's it. That's it.
Wow. Dude, good for you. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Unbelievably inspirational story. A lot of people can take away from that. If people want to look you up, follow you, if they're interested in borrowing and working with Citizens, how do they get a hold of you personally, Citizens, whatever you want to put out there for people?
Yeah, hopefully we can throw out a link up there, but you can follow Watanasuparp at Instagram.com. I know I need to shorten that, but
spell that out, bro.
Oh man, I don't even know if you want to bore the audience with that, but you can follow me on Facebook, on Instagram, and Twitter, and hopefully we'll be on YouTube soon. I think we are on YouTube, right, Josiah? Yeah. Yeah, we're on YouTube too. We got Josiah, my man here, right behind Charles.
Yeah,
so.
buddy.
But yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and you've been a
Absolutely.
You've been a pleasure
You're the man.
to spend some time with.
I'm always here for you. Obviously, if you have any calls, if I can help in any regard,
Sure.
I'm always here. And obviously, if you need plans and you need permits, we got the one and only Captain Permit, 516-513-8838. Obviously, I'm the Handsome Homebuyer, so you know it. If you have a house that smells like cat pee, is dated from the 1960s, has 6 inches of mold on the wall, human waste floating past the basement steps. These are all true stories, by the way. Commercial land, gas stations, you name it. Trailer parks. I'm on a trailer park kick now. I want to buy it. 516-777-SOLD. That's a wrap.
Orgulloso estoy de mi herencia judía. Benjamín Lev Ben Shlomo, cuando me llaman a la torre, así me llamo yo.